The nonsensical world of Lewis Carroll seemed like a match made in heaven for cinema. From the very earliest days of the silent era, it captured the imagination of filmmakers. It was a fantastical world of creatures, magic, and lunacy ready to be adapted into state-of-the-art effects and creative production. Unfortunately, when it came to actually bringing it to life, more movies failed than succeeded. The first attempt would be in 1903, running at 8.5 to 12 minutes depending on the frame rate. It was an extremely condensed version of the book that attempted to make use of summary titles and rudimentary effects to bring scenes to life, such as the shrinking of the Hall of Doors or Alice growing large inside a house. It was held back by both the technology of the time, lack of development of the film language, and distribution still favoring short-form storytelling. It also spent far too long on the Cheshire Cat, who's just kind of this normal cat, which is double exposed into the frame, far from the most thrilling of sequences. The second take of the property would be a full 7 years later by legendary film pioneer Edwin S. Porter, most famous for the revolutionary The Great Train Robbery. This too would be limited by the short film format and ran only 10 minutes long. Again, this was a short and cheap production. It had the benefit of actually having a girl cast as Alice who looked young enough to pass as a child. It also had more convincing shrinking effects than the previous film. Yet as much as the film got to experiment with more early special effects, it never really captured the cleverness of stuff Georges Méliès was doing years earlier in his various trick films. It was also, very much like the 1903 version, held back by its very short runtime that forces it to fly through the scenes and omit most of the book. And this brings us to our current for the time, long-form adaptation with the feature-length version by W. W. Young. By 1915, film had come a long way, especially compared to 1903. And now the question remains is if they had what it took to crack the formula. Third time's the charm? This version is notable for being the first to combine chapters from both Through the Looking Glass and Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. What is maybe the most fascinating and often head-scratching is what the filmmakers chose to include versus exclude. Many scenes that, by modern standards, are considered iconic, they're swapped and focused on lesser-known elements, such as, say, the full inclusion of the Old Father William poem. Now, the great irony here is that the silent film is the only version to include this poem. What are the odds? At the very least, by focusing on different elements, it does make for a unique viewing experience. The story is one that most people are familiar with. Alice goes and plays with her cat and then takes a nap and then ends up following a rabbit down a hole to Wonderland. There she experiences many nonsensical adventures. Having not read the book, sorry, this is Journey Through Cinema, not Journey Through Classic Children's Literature. But anyways, having not read the book, I can't really say how accurate the film is compared to the source, or how accurate the film is compared to classics like the 1951 Disney adaptation. Though I did find some Disney-esque imagery, such as Alice's dress forming this sort of parachute when she falls. Though the film does have some stuff that I haven't seen, such as when it tries to insinuate that all the creatures she meets prior to going to Wonderland are all part of some sort of subconscious projection. Now, I'm not sure how much of this is from the original book, as it reminded me far more of, say, The Wizard of Oz. Maybe it's a coincidence, maybe it isn't there, maybe Wizard of Oz stole it from it, or the other way around. I don't know, who can say? However, back to this 1915 film. This version that I was able to locate was unfortunately very incomplete, and intertitles had to be added for context. Large segments of the big effect scenes, such as Alice growing in her house, they're missing in their entirety. It made for a bit of a disjointed watch. At the very least, it seemed to have more money behind it than, say, the 1903 or 1910 versions, especially when it comes to the costume department. Now, don't get me wrong, by modern standards, these costumes still look cheap. But there are some impressive ones, such as the Cheshire Cat or the two walruses, which I don't know why I particularly like those ones. I don't know, maybe it's because they're all, it's a walrus in a suit. What's not to like? At the very least, it doesn't look like something that was pulled out of a middle school play. Well, not always, I guess. There are a few animal costumes here that do look like they were recycled from that cheap Oz trilogy that we covered previously. For the most part, though, for the ones that are clearly made for the film and not just dug out of a generic costume closet, these look true to what most people picture when they, think of these characters. Now, Edwin S. Porter directed the 1910 version, but you could have fooled me. W. W. Young seems to have gone to the Porter School of Cinema, much like how Porter was behind the times for his 1914 Tessa the Storm Country, which, again, we covered on this channel. Young's version of Alice in Wonderland is out of date, almost in the exact same ways. It has a lockdown and static feel to the camera, where nearly everything is shot at this drab wide. Likewise, it's a film about 7 years out of date. Now, Young was hardly the most prestigious of directors, and honestly, it's been pretty hard for me to find any kind of history on his directorial, resume. So either he left a very small footprint, or he had very few films under his belt. Now, as I mentioned before, what it chooses to include versus what it chooses to ignore, it can be a little, baffling. The Tea Party with the Mad Hatter is barely present, while the film concentrates a massive amount of time on someone called the Mock Turtle. Here, the pacing drags to a halt, just to allow various animals to slowly lumber out of the ocean and shuffle around awkwardly in these cumbersome costumes. This did not need to take up a quarter of the film. And then there's that aforementioned poem I mentioned before. I've heard fans pick this out as one of the best parts of the film, but for me, again, I don't really know the scene because I didn't read the book, so for me the sequence was fine? But good for them, I guess, for including a fan favorite moment that no one else has yet bothered with. So the effects here alternate from laughably bad, such as the flamingo croquet, and I did get a legitimate kick out of that. I did like watching them try and swing those floppy heads around to hit a ball. I don't know. Got my sense of humor, I guess. Either it's like that, or it's freakishly creepy, like the Cheshire Cat becoming this decapitated head. The effects are a mix and match of both various successes and complete failures. Fortunately, unlike, say, the Oz trilogy we covered before, which left out a lot of the most well-known characters, this one does have actually some of the most recognizable figures. You do get to see the Cheshire Cat, the Caterpillar, the Mad Hatter, the White Rabbit, and the Queen. However, fans of those particular characters may be disappointed in how much of that short 50-minute runtime is actually afforded to them. Fan favorite Mad Hatter barely gets more than a couple minutes, if even that. Maybe it was only a couple seconds, it felt like. While the Queen, in particular, pops in and out of the film, with the ending being focused on this trial of who stole her tarts. When Alice is called as a witness, not even a suspect, she kind of just starts ranting and insulting all of them and going, hey, you're nothing but a bunch of playing cards. This is probably from the book, I'm willing to guess, because it's ridiculous enough. As you can expect, this doesn't exactly endear the jury to her, and the Queen just outright demands for her head. At that point, she wakes up and is safe and sound. Again, I'm not sure how accurate this is to the books, but within a movie format, it made the ending feel really abrupt, almost as if the makers got kind of tired of filming or ran out of money and decided, okay, it's time to just be over now. And so even though it may possibly be true to the source material, it's not exactly satisfying to watch on screen. Needless to say, the 19 version of Alice in Wonderland is not going down in history as the definitive version. That's okay though. As hit and miss as it could be with the pacing, costumes, and effects, there is still this weird sense of loyalty to the source material. This entire thing is all silly and nonsensical, and that's very much in the true spirit of the original story. You can see that even through all the faults and limitations, the odd scene choices, the makers, I think, really did want to bring this world to life. And I think a lot of fans will really respect that, even if, for me, it really fell short of a lot of those lofty goals. But those are just my gut feelings on the first feature film adaptation of Alice in Wonderland. If you have seen this movie, what did you think of it? Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. As always, keep those reels turning. Thank you very much, and I hope my mic was better this time. Sorry about the past audio. Sorry about this audio if it's bad too, I guess. Anyways, bye.